So we are reading Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. We are on chapter 9, page number 77 of the book and page number
100 of the PDF. The throat chakra, 5A, located at the front of the throat, is associated with taking responsibility for one's personal needs. The newborn is brought to the breast but must suck before nourishment is gained. This same principle holds throughout life. As the person matures, the fulfillment of his needs rests more and more upon himself. Maturity is reached, and this chakra functions properly when one ceases to blame others for one's lack in life and goes out to create what one needs and desires.
right. So it is also a place of expressing yourself, when you create boundaries for yourself and then you start taking responsibility for yourself. So your word becomes your power, and this operates from the throat chakra.
This center also shows what the state of the person is with respect to receiving whatever is coming towards him. If the center is measured as counterclockwise, the person does not take in what is given to him.
So again, throat chakra is related to communication. And a lot of communication is actually about listening, right? About accepting, about receiving. So naturally, if the throat chakra is not functioning properly, you're not going to be listening and you're not going to be receiving in the way that you need to be receiving.
This is usually associated with an image about what it is that is coming to him in the first place. That is, if the person sees the world as a negative, generally hostile place, he will be cautious and have negative expectations about what is coming his way. He may expect hostility, violence, or humiliation rather than love and nourishment. Since he sets up a negative force field with his negative expectations, he will attract negative input to him. That is, if he has expectations of violence, he has violence inside of himself and therefore attracts it via the law of like attracts like, as explained in chapter 6 on the nature of the universal energy field.
Right. So this is something that we are noticing in the biofield tuning also. When we are getting the earth star into the correct place and it stops at the eye level, one thing I've started understanding is that the person's perspective about what is happening around him is operating from the left side of the grid. So when we look at it from the negative and positive, if he is operating from the left side of the grid, he is operating at the negative level, right? Now, whenever you are operating from the negative side of things, then that is what you're going to attract to yourself. So naturally, how are you experiencing something is also a concept that the throat chakra talks about, right? When you're listening to something, how are you processing that data? What are you doing with it? What are your expectations? Everything starts to come from here. See, whatever you're thinking, that's what you're going to communicate. That's what you're going to radiate. And that's what you're going to attract to yourself.
In another case, this center may be overactive. It could measure very large in a clockwise direction, accompanied by a small clockwise or counterclockwise heart chakra. In this case, the person's will isn't particularly negative. It is just used to serve the function the heart center would serve. Instead of being able to let go, trust, and love.
Mr.
Sorry. As the person opens his throat center, he will gradually attract more nourishment until he is able to receive so much that he will be able to keep his throat center open most of the time. In the interim, he may very well attract a negative input shortly after opening the center due to his belief that that is what will come. When he is able to go through this experience, connect to the original cause within himself, and find inner trust again, he will reopen his throat center. This process of opening and closing continues until all the misconceptions of receiving or taking in are transformed into trust in a benign, nourishing universe.
So again, it's a matter of perspective change. How are you changing your perspective? How is whatever is coming at you occurring to you, right? Till we don't rehash the way that we are looking at stuff, we are not going to be able to integrate it into our system in the proper way, right? And I think the grid is a beautiful tool, to understand where we are operating from, and whatever is coming at us, where is that operating from, and whether we really want to accept it or not accept it, or the way that we need to look at it, from what perspective do we need to look at it. These shifts can be pretty profound when we look at our lives ourselves.
The aspect of assimilation that occurs at the back of the fifth chakra, 5B, sometimes referred to as the professional center, is associated with the person's sense of self within the society, his profession, and with his peers. If a person is not comfortable in this area of his life, then this discomfort may very well be covered by pride to compensate for lack of self-esteem.
So again, the back of the throat chakra will make a person egoistic if it is not working properly, right? So again, where are we operating from?
The center at the back of the neck is usually open if one is successful and well suited in one's work and satisfied with that work as one's task in life. If the person has chosen a profession that is both challenging and fulfilling and is giving his best to his work, this center will be in full bloom. He will be professionally successful and will be receiving support for nourishment from his universe. If this is not the case, the person will hold back from giving his best. He will be unsuccessful and conceal his lack of success with his pride.
So again, the point is that whether we are suited, right? Square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes. If we are not accepting of what is happening around us, then automatically we'll end up creating problems for ourselves.
He secretly knows he would be better if he would either give his best or get a more challenging job. Somehow, this person never does either and keeps a defense of pride in order to avoid the real despair underneath.
So what this would also imply is that the person is maintaining a facade. Whenever you're maintaining a facade, you'll be on the left side of the grid. It will be depleting. You'll never feel the pleasure. You'll never feel the pleasures of life. You'll never feel satisfied. Always there will be a depletion going on, right? So it's very important to be true to ourselves.
He knows that he is really not succeeding in life. He will probably play the role of the victim, stating how life has not given him the opportunities to let him develop his great talent. This pride needs to be released and the pain and despair felt and also released.
So again, what is the thing, right? Now, if we are a square peg in a round hole, blame game will also start, because we are not being able to do what we need to do. We will start blaming situations. And whenever we are blaming, it means we are not taking responsibility. So we are not taking charge of what is happening with us. And that in the long run can never work to make you happy.
In this center, we will also uncover the fear of failure that blocks taking the chance to move out and create what one so dearly wants. This also holds true of one's personal friendships and social life in general. By avoiding contact, this person also avoids revealing himself and feeling the fear of not being liked on the one hand, and competition and pride like I'm better than you are not good enough for me on the other.
So again, because you're maintaining a facade, it becomes difficult for you to manage it all the time, right? So that facade will always create a stress in you. It will always create a strain in you. So naturally, you know inside what is happening. So there'll be a fear of connecting with other people because you're maintaining that facade. Okay. So it's always better to be true. It's always better to be transparent at the end of the day so that you can be your true self.
Since our feelings of rejection originate inside and we then project them out onto the other, we avoid the other person to avoid rejection. Taking the chance of going for the profession you long for, moving towards the contacts you long for, and revealing your feelings about it are ways of releasing these feelings and thus opening this chakra.
So again, being true to yourself. So it takes us to the movie Three Idiots, right? Where the two friends of Amir Khan, they were not really doing what they wanted to do. And ultimately, when did they find peace? When did they find success? When they decided to pursue what they really wanted to do, right? So it's very important for us, and to really understand what is it that is drawing us, what is it that is really attracting us, right? And whether it is attracting us from a higher level of consciousness or a lower level of consciousness. And the kinesiology testing or the ring test can be a very powerful way in which you can actually test stuff for yourself. So the more you do it, the more comfortable you will start becoming with testing. You can always ask, will this work for me or not? Is it the best thing for me to do right now or not? Right? And then you can move forward. It really helps because you're tapping into the sensitivity of the body to guide you and give guidance. Of course, if you're going into focus 12 and focus 21, you can get guidance there also in a very powerful way.
The forehead center, chakra 6A, is associated with the capacity to visualize and understand mental concepts. This includes the person's concepts of reality and the universe, or how he sees the world and how he thinks the world is likely to respond to him. If this center is counterclockwise, one has confused mental concepts or images about reality that are not true and are usually negative. The person holding them projects them onto the world and creates his world by them.
So if you really look at it, I find that this center, the forehead center, is also a center of implementation, right? So how are you perceiving things? That is how you will land up implementing it. Now, if it is clogged, then what happens is that it becomes difficult for a person to start implementing things, right? They will implement in the wrong way. So it is taking steps in the direction which is not in the direction that you want to go. Whenever it is clogged, it will start creating those problems for you. This is something that we've noticed even in spaces. If the frequency of the Agya Chakra is not flowing correctly, then implementation becomes a huge problem. They can't visualize, they can't really decipher as to what is the action that they need to take, right? So things don't get done when you are operating with a clogged Agya Chakra, or the frequency of the Agya Chakra is not flowing properly in an environment.
If this center is clogged and weak, the person is usually blocked in his creative ideas simply because the amount of energy flowing through this center is small. If this center is strongly counterclockwise, then this person has the ability to generate strong ideas that are negative. If this is combined with a strongly functioning executive center located at the back of the head, chakra 6B, this can create havoc in a person's life.
So what does it mean, right? Now, if you're getting the wrong ideas and you start implementing them in your life, then naturally it is going to cause havoc in your life. So we need to be very aware of this.
During the therapy process of purifying or sorting our negative belief images, when an image arises in the energy system and begins to function dominantly, this center will probably spin counterclockwise. even if it is usually clockwise. This therapy process brings the image to the fore and causes it to manifest in the life of the person. With therapeutic help, the person will understand and see the image clearly for what it is.
So again, we need to have conscious awareness of what is coming into our system, understanding it, rehashing it, and seeing that it is productive for us or not. That awareness starts becoming very, very important.
The center will then turn around and will spin clockwise. Usually, this type of counterclockwise motion can be detected by the seasoned therapist because of the unstable quality of feeling accompanied by the counterclockwise motion.
So if it is spinning counterclockwise, there will be instability, destabilization in the entire system. Basically, what is happening is you're taking and doing stuff which is wrong, right? Technically speaking. Now, there is no right or wrong, but for that person, it will be wrong. So if he's doing wrong things for himself, naturally there's havoc in his life, there's problems in his life, things are not going well in his life, there's a delay tendency in everything that is happening. Nothing really manifests in the way that they want to manifest it, right? So automatically there will be problems. So naturally the person is going to be depleted and very unstable.
It will be apparent to the therapist that this is not the normal state of affairs. For example, the chakra may even show a chaotic motion, which tells the practitioner that an issue regarding one of his client's concepts of reality is strongly shaking the client's personality.
Yeah, so one or two ideas which are very, very catharistic can actually shake your entire system.
At the back of the head, the mental executive center, chakra 6B, is associated with implementing the creative ideas formulated through the center in the forehead. If the executive will center is open, one's ideas are followed with the appropriate action to cause them to materialize in the physical world. If it is not open, the person has a rough time bringing his ideas into fruition.
So again, if the centers, the back center and the front center are not working properly, it will become very difficult to implement anything. So there will be constant delay tendency. If something needs to happen in 1 month, it will happen in 3 months. If it happens, supposed to happen in 6 months, it'll happen in 2 years, right? So there's a constant delay tendency. Stuff doesn't get executed. If this is not this, the will center at the back of the agya is not working properly.
It is especially frustrating to have the front center 6A open and the back one closed. One has many creative ideas, but they never seem to work out.
Now, this is seen in the aura photographs also, when many times, people have a lot of orange right in the center of the photograph, the way that we take it with the ProGen camera. It simply means that there is a lot of creativity. There's a lot of creative ideas that the person has, but the person is not implementing it. So I would say that this is a classic state of these aura pictures where the orange is in the center, but it's not coming out through the right side and going to the left side, which shows that implementation is taking place.
Does this mean that the person is psychologically disturbed?
No, it means the person is having a lot of creative ideas, but I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, I can do this, I want to do this, but they're not implementing anything, right? So that will create, naturally the person is not implementing anything. So naturally progress in life, growth in life gets stunted. So I can't say that this will relate to psychological factors immediately, but yeah, the guy will not be able to be doing anything much because he's not implementing his ideas in the real world.
Thank you.
There is usually an accompanying excuse which blames the problem on the outer world. Usually, this person simply needs training on how to carry out, step by step, what he wants to accomplish.
So now this again, we do it with most clients, right? When we find that this is not working properly, we'll always tell them, make out a list of all that you need to do, right? Once you have that list, pick up the stuff which is the easiest to do and just do it. Finish it off, get it out of your head. So then when a smaller list comes up, then we tell them that, okay, now you pick up one thing and make a list of how you can accomplish this. So again, the step-by-step approach to be able to accomplish and implement stuff. And it really works with most people.
Usually, this person simply needs training on how to carry out step by step what he wants to accomplish. In doing this type of step by step work, a lot of feelings will emerge. I can't stand to wait so long. I don't want to take responsibility for this happening. I don't want to test the idea in physical reality. I don't accept this long process of creation. I just want it to happen without so much work. You do the work, I'll be the idea man. This person probably lacked early training in how to take the simple steps in the physical world to accomplish his chosen purpose. He is already probably resistant to being in physical reality and in the position of an apprentice.
So now what happens, right? This is a case which is happening, I think, with a lot of kids, because the child's homework becomes the mother's homework. Now the child is not doing the work, the mother is doing the work, right? Now this becomes a problem because the child may have an idea, but he's not being trained how to implement it. And that going forward will naturally create a problem for him or her. Okay. So that's why making the child do the work that they need to do, in my view, becomes very important, because otherwise they'll never be able to implement stuff in their life.
On the other hand, if the center is clockwise and the idea center is counterclockwise, we have an even more upsetting situation. Even if the person's basic concepts are not in reality, she will nevertheless proceed to carry the distorted concepts out with a certain amount of success.
So again, what when we are looking at it, when we go into a person's house, again, we are going to come to the crown center. But what I find is that from the crown, we are getting our plan. And from the Agya, we are implementing. Now, if this is okay and this is not okay, then the plan doesn't get implemented. But if this is not okay and this is okay, then you'll start implementing stuff that is not going to work for you. And then that creates a bigger confusion and a bigger problem, because the stuff that you're doing, you're constantly going to take one step forward and two steps back, two steps forward and one step back. So you'll keep wishy-washing over and over again, spending a lot of resources and energy, but nothing will come out of it.
For example, if you believe this world is a nasty place where everyone is out for himself, so you just take what you want. And you have the ability to do so because you know how to go about it. That is, your executive will is functioning. Then you may act like a criminal. In this case, the heart is probably also clogged. Your life will prove your idea to a certain extent. You will be successful to a certain extent until you get caught. Or with this kind of configuration, you may try to make something happen that is simply impossible to do in the physical world. Or you may be the mover who carries out another person's ideas, whatever they are.
So again, if this center is not working properly, or this center is not working properly, then you will not have ideas, right? But if the back chakra is working properly, you'll be able to implement ideas for other people. So this person is not a leader. This person becomes the follower, the doer, right? That also can happen to a person. Now, again, it's a matter of studying and really assessing where a person is coming from.
The crown chakra, crown center, chakra 7, is related to the person's connection to his spirituality and the integration of his whole being, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. If this center is closed, the person probably does not have an experiential connection to his spirituality. He probably does not have that cosmic feeling and does not understand what people are talking about when they speak of their spiritual experiences. If this center is open, the person probably often experiences his spirituality in a very personal form, unique to that individual. This spirituality is not one defined by dogma or easily related with words. It is rather a state of being, a state of transcendence of the mundane reality into the infinite. It goes beyond the physical world and creates in the individual a sense of wholeness, peace, and faith, giving him a sense of purpose to his existence.
So again, the crown chakra is naturally connected with your higher perception, with your higher connections. This is a place where we get downloads. If this is not open, the downloads will not happen. The connections will not be made. The spiritual growth will simply not take place.
Chapter 10, Chakra or Energy Center Diagnosis. There are several ways to discern the state of the chakras. In the beginning, you will need to explore which practice is easiest and most useful for you. The best way I have found to start sensing the states of the chakra is to use a pendulum. This device helps increase your sensitivities to the energy flow because it acts as an amplifier. The best pendulums I have found for this purpose are made of beechwood and are pear-shaped. They are 1 inch in diameter and 1.5 inches long. Their energy field is diffused easily, permeated, and also pear-shaped. It is symmetrical around its vertical axis, which is important for this type of measurement. Beechwood pendulums can be purchased from the Metaphysical Research Group Archers Court, Stoneside Lane, Hastings, England. If you have developed some
so we can actually start measuring the chakras and start reading them. This is something that we've been doing with Astha Gulati in the 7 Chakra Mastery Program. We are going to have another program by her, and then we'll move into advanced programs through her also. Okay, but naturally we are reading it over here, so we can actually start working with it also. So I would suggest that, if you're wanting to work with it according to this book, everyone should acquire a pendulum. Now, of course, she's talking about the Beechwood pendulum, but I think any pendulum will work, right? And we can actually start having, practical classes also, or a practical session to show us this. And those who have attended Astha's program can actually chip in and, talk from what the aspect from what she was talking about also. And then we can actually do Astha's program again. Yes, Agri?
Can we use the pendulum which we used for the chakra workshop?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Get any pendulum.
No, she particularly use it only for chakras. So is it okay to use?
Yeah, naturally we are talking about chakras here only.
Yeah, so it's okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
If you have developed some sensitivity in your hands or enjoy touching, you can practice sensing the energy flowing in and out of the chakras through feeling them with your hands. This helps to get a sense of whether the energy is free-flowing or clogged, weak or strong. You can do the same thing with an acupuncture point by simply placing your fingertip over it. In this type of sensing, you may even get certain physical feelings, responses in your own body that gives you the information you wish to know.
So again, whenever we need to sensitize ourselves, and our body is a very sophisticated instrument, right? So actually speaking, you can do everything that you can. I mean, what I do with a Lecker antenna, or what we do with a pendulum, you can do it with your hands. You can actually sense with your fingers. In fact, Shamji Bhatnagar, he can sense the micro chakras and give you a proper reading of what is happening. And he can actually discern whether you were breastfed as a child, whether you slept with your parents or not, was a disconnection made, and how you're communicating and all that stuff, because according to the micro chakra concept that Shamji Bhatnagar talks about, there are 21 micro chakras in every chakra, and each of them has a certain connotation. The micro chakra book also is a very nice way to look at the chakric system. And people who are interested in really taking this forward, you all should get the micro chakra book also, and then read it in conjunction with this book. Okay, it can become really, it'll really open up another kind of way of looking at stuff for us.
Eventually, after you develop your high sense perception to a greater degree, you may be able to simply look at the chakras to see how they are spinning regularly or irregularly and what their colors are: dark and clogged, washed out and weak, or clear, bright, and of a strong tone. You may also be able to see if and specifically how they are disfigured. You may eventually be able to perceive them on each layer of the auric field. But first, let us practice using the pendulum.
Okay, so what is she saying? That you can actually, when we start raising our level of sensitivity, you can actually just sense the chakras, not by your hands, but just by perceiving them. And if they are clogged, if they are working properly or not, okay, you can also see if they are disfigured, they're not really working properly. And there are many ways in which a chakra can actually get disfigured. So let's see what she has to say about the pendulum, and then we'll see how we'll work this.
Exercise to diagnose chakras with a pendulum. To measure the front chakras, ask your patient to lie on his back. To measure the back chakras, ask the patient to lie on his stomach. To measure the state of the chakra, hold the pendulum on a string about 6 inches long over the chakra and empty your mind of all bias as to the state of the chakra.
Now, this is very important. Empty your mind, right? Because if you're thinking of something, then that is what the pendulum will start to reflect. Okay, you can do this with a neutral pendulum also, with a plexiglass pendulum, and or any other kind of pendulum. We can really work with anything over here. We'll see how to do it.
This is the hardest part and requires practice. Be sure that the pendulum is as close to the body as possible without touching it. Your energy flows into the field of the pendulum to energize it. This combined field of the pendulum and your energy then interacts with the field of the subject, causing the pendulum to move. It will probably move in a circular pattern, circumscribing an imaginary circle above the body of your subject. It may move back and forth in an elliptical movement or a straight line. It may move erratically. The size and direction of the pendulum movement indicates the amount and direction of energy flowing through the chakra.
So this is something we did really a lot in Asta's program, where you can actually see the movement. And if it's moving straight, it means something. If it moves clockwise, it's vertically, it means something. Clockwise, anti-clockwise, etc., etc. Right. So you can actually discern a lot of information by just seeing the movement of the pendulum.
Dr. John Pirakos has found that a clockwise movement of the pendulum denotes a psychodynamically open chakra. That means that the feelings and psychological experiences which are governed by and flow through that chakra are well balanced and full in that person's life. If the pendulum moves counterclockwise, that chakra is psychodynamically closed, indicating a problem area in its corresponding psychological aspect. That means that the feelings and psychological experiences which are governed by a flow through the chakra are not balanced because the energy is blocked. And probably the person has negative experiences associated with them.
So the idea is ultimately to have balanced chakras, because if the energy is not flowing correctly through the chakric system, it will cause psychological effects. And this is something we see when we go into a space, we can actually just understand what is happening in the place by just seeing the flow of energy or frequency of energy at the various chakra frequencies.
The size of the circle made by the pendulum is related to the chakra strength and the amount of energy flowing through it. It is also related to the amount of energy the healer and the subject have that day. If a larger circle is circumscribed by a pendulum, there is a lot of energy flowing through it. If the circle is small, there is less energy flowing through it.
So again, this is also a matter of practice of how you're going to see the movement, right? It is a learned technique. You can actually judge yourself by seeing how your pendulum is moving, whether it's strong or right. So you have to develop your own language to read the language that the pendulum is talking with, because every person will have a different kind of a feel, a different kind of a reaction. But having said that, clockwise movement is good and anti-clockwise movement is depleting.
It is important to keep in mind that the size of the chakra is not the diameter of the circular figure circumscribed by the pendulum, but is indicated by it. The size of the pendulum circle is a function of the interaction of all three fields, the field of the subject, therapist, and pendulum, as mentioned earlier. If the energies of both people are low, all chakras will appear to be smaller. If the energies are high, all chakras will appear to be larger. One must focus on comparison of the relative sizes among the chakras. Health is achieved by balancing the chakras to create an even flow of energy through them all. For health, then, all chakras should be about the same size.
So this is very clear, right? Having one chakra which is huge and operating very, very extensively and the other chakra small, it's not going to work out. We need to have balanced chakras, that all of them are functioning more or less at the same rate and in the same way.
There are many variations between the clockwise and counterclockwise basic forms that indicate various psychological states. Figure 10.2 is a table of the various shapes a pendulum circumscribes. Although at first glance this table may seem a bit complicated, it is really quite simple. Each movement circumscribed by the pendulum is a variation between the extremes of a fully open chakra, clockwise 6-inch diameter, C6, or a fully closed chakra, which is counterclockwise, CC6. I rarely find diameters larger than 6 inches unless the person is overusing a particular chakra or is very open after a spiritual experience when most of the chakras are open. I have measured up to C10 clockwise with a diameter of 10 inches. The only exception to falling between C6 and CC6 is the completely still chakra S, where the pendulum exhibits no movement at all. In this case, either the chakra is reversing its spin or the individual has so overused or held down and blocked the particular psychological functioning associated with this chakra that it has ceased to spin altogether and no longer metabolizes any energy from the universal energy field. This is a state that, if continued for very long, will most assuredly result in disease. Since the body cannot function healthily without being able to make use of outside energy. See chapter 15 on relationship between illness and the chakras.
So naturally, we are absorbing energy from the environment through the chakric system. And if the energy is not flowing into the system, then naturally it will cause hormonal imbalance, which will cause physical imbalances in the system. So you have the clockwise range and you have the anti-clockwise range, and then you have something in the middle which is still. Now, if the chakra is still and stuck, then naturally nothing is flowing through the chakra. So it becomes a problem. So we need to figure out how to make it flow properly.
Any elliptical swing of the pendulum indicates a right-left side imbalance of energy flow in the body. The designations of left or right refer to the left or right sides of the patient's body. The pendulum swings upward to the left, or CEL, or upward to the right, CER, side of the patient's body. This also indicates that one side of the body is stronger than the other.
So again, when we are looking at the Lecker antenna also, the central axis, if it is not aligned, it will split up to the left or to the right, right? And this indicates the imbalance or balance between the sides of our body. This is also the reason why in Vastu, in olden buildings, they always had two leaves to the door. The energy which is absorbed by the chakric system comes into the environment or the house through the main door. And you will find in old Havelis, it was always a two-leaf door which opened inwards, which allowed the energy to come into the house. Okay.
The right side, CCER, represents the active, aggressive, masculine or yang nature. The left side, CEL or CCEL, represents the passive, receptive, feminine or yin nature of the personality. When the pendulum circumscribes an ellipse slanted up towards the right side of the subject's body, Dr. John Pirakos has observed that the personality has its masculine aspect more developed than the feminine. This person will probably be overactive in the sense that he would be aggressive in moments when receptivity is more appropriate. This will happen with regard to issues directly related to the area of psychological functioning governed by the particular chakra, which exhibits elliptical motion.
So again, it's a matter of balance between the right and left side of the body system. What we are totally looking for is balance. That is the most important thing that we are looking for.
In any chakra where the elliptical pendulum swing is up towards the left, CCEL, the person is more likely to be passive in situations
So we'll come back to this chart later.
related to issues involved with the particular psychological aspects governed by that chakra. For example, if the will center between the shoulder blades 4B reads passive, elliptical towards upper left, the person will be unable to reach out for what he wants. This person will remain passive when aggressive action is called for. This person will wait for someone else to do it or someone else to give it to him. He will also not be able to stand up for his rights or his turn. Many times, a false humility is held up as the reason this person remains passive. But the truth is that he is afraid to be aggressive, usually due to some very deep images about what it means to be aggressive.
Right. So again, this is talking about the throat chakra at the back, or the heart chakra at the back, right? So you're not being able to implement what you're wanting to do. You're not getting what you want to do. So again, using the chakric system, it's very easy to start understanding the physiology, the psychology of a particular person. And the beauty of this process is, and as Asta teaches it, that you can do it in remote. Of course, you should normally take the permission of the person before doing anything.
The image about aggression comes directly from childhood experience. For example, a child may have had a very aggressive father who would overpower or humiliate the child every time he reached out for what he wanted. This convinced the child that reaching out for what he wanted was not a good way to get what he wanted. Children are very creative, so the child probably experimented with ways of getting what he wanted, or at least of getting something as compensation for what he wanted. Whatever way works is what the child will adopt as natural behavior. He will continue this behavior until it no longer works well in his life. Unfortunately, the habit is hard to break, and changing to find new ways takes work because aggression is seen primarily as negative. Usually, under all the passivity is a very hostile, aggressive component of the personality that would like to blast out feelings without restraint and take what it wants. If this is done repeatedly in a therapeutic setting, the person will eventually be able to integrate his healthy aggression with the rest of his personality. This aggressive work needs to be done simultaneously with work that turns passivity into healthy receptivity.
So again, we can actually judge the way a person is working and start adjusting it through discussion and talk and taking steps and putting tools into being implemented by that person to really understand how this thing is working and to make it the way that we would like it to work. So this is something that we continuously do even in the biofield tuning process, where we are constantly talking to the person and saying that, okay, this is stuck over here. This is what you need to do. This is the action that you need to do. And then we see that the field starts to clear up and they start to behave better and all that thing starts to happen.
The more the circular movement of the pendulum is distorted above any given chakra, the more severe is the psychological distortion. The most severe right-left split is shown by the back and forth movement of the pendulum at a 45-degree angle to the vertical axis of the body. R3, R4 or figure 10.2. The larger the pendulum movement, the greater the amount of energy contained in the distortion. For example, an R6 measurement for chakra 4B indicates that the person will simply and aggressively take what he wants, no matter what the circumstances are. The same general rule for measuring severity holds true of the back and forth pendulum swing, which is either vertical, parallel to the body's vertical axis, V, or horizontal, perpendicular to the body's vertical axis, H. The vertical aspect indicates that the individual is diverting energy upwards towards the vertical, which means he's avoiding personal interaction. The horizontal pendulum movement indicates the individual is holding down and compacting the energy flow and feelings to avoid personal interaction. For example, a pendulum reading of V5 at chakra 3A indicates that the person is focusing his personal connection towards the vertical and spirituality and avoiding a personal relationship with another human being. He defines who he is in the universe from the point of view of a spiritual belief and cuts out the aspect of being connected to another human being. Whereas a pendulum reading of H5 for the same chakra would indicate that the person is not connecting to anyone, not on the spiritual level, not on the human level. This could lead to personal isolation. This particular motion could go into a still chakra S from underuse and compaction. Strong physical psychodynamic work is needed in such a case.
So again, it's basically understanding what's the reading of the of the pendulum. This, I think, will come only with practice. What we can do is we can make a copy of the movements and then send it out, or we'll post it on the group so that, everyone can start practicing. Although the PDF is there, so you can always take it from that. I suggest that make a note of the page number of the movements, which will be very important if at all you all want to practice it. It's page number 84 and 85.
When an individual is focusing his psychological work on a particular aspect of his being, either from deciding to do so from an inner place or forced to from some outside circumstance, the particular chakra or chakras involved will probably display chaotic or asymmetrical movement, CEAS or CCEAS, as in figure 10.2. This movement will cause the pendulum to swing chaotically, usually exhibiting elliptical motion combined with a shifting axis. At first, this movement may confuse the beginner. However, if the pendulum is held over the chakra for a longer period of time, the axis shift will be observable. The circumscribed pattern of the pendulum will look like the last two items in figure 10.2. Whenever this type of movement is observed, the therapist knows a lot is going on in the client. It is time to work deeply on the issues involved, but at the same time, giving the client a lot of personal time and space to do his own self-examination transformation. If he can take a few days off from work at this time and be undisturbed by his daily routine, he will be able to make the best of this period of great personal change. I have regularly observed this phenomenon in people undergoing deep personal transformation work in week-long intensive retreats.
So again, shifts are absolutely possible. We can actually change our perspective, how things are occurring to us. And when that happens, life also naturally changes.
As the therapist becomes more proficient in the use of the pendulum, he will begin to observe more qualities in his measurements. The rate of swing, how fast the pendulum moves, indicates the amount of energy being metabolized through the chakra.
So again, basically you need to learn, okay? You need to develop your own language. So whatever is indicated in the book is indicative, but we need to develop our own way of receiving it, testing the information, and then implementing the information.
With practice, the therapist can also pick up qualities such as tightness, tension, exuberance, heaviness, sadness, grief, peacefulness, and clarity.
So this is absolutely possible. In the biofield tuning process, the sound and the vibrations perceived or received through the tuning fork actually shift, right? And using that, we can actually start to discern what is the quality of the block which is there in the field. And this naturally over here, she's saying you can do it with the pendulum also. Fifth line, thus.
You said something?
Is the fifth line, thus.
Thus, by developing more acute senses to the quality of the energy flowing through the chakra, the therapist can be better informed about the client's state. He can tell how stable a chakra is, approximately how long it has been in the state it is in, whether it changes back and forth between two states and more. A chakra may be open 20% of the time or 80% of the time. This can be picked up by the sensitively trained therapist. This, of course, takes practice with verification. Chakras go through different phases as they change from closed to open through the intensive work in therapy. The process of changing one's belief system redirects chakra movement. A chakra that is continually closed at a large diameter CC6 will sometimes, over a period of time, decrease its diameter, turn around, and then increase its diameter in the harmonious direction until it becomes C6. Or more often, a CC6 chakra, say in the heart or solar plexus, may within as little as 5 minutes of deep crying turn around to C6. This type of change will not hold long, but as the person continues his work over a long period of time, the chakra tends to stay open longer each time it is open. This increases its overall percentage time of the harmonious functioning, and the person will feel himself being happy for longer periods of time.
So again, it's one step at a time, right? If you get a jerk, suddenly something happens, then it can become difficult for the body system to sustain it. So it's always better slow and steady, one step at a time.
Over a long time, the chakra will stabilize to the open position and will rarely close. The individual usually then moves on in his process to work on the next disharmoniously functioning chakra that interferes with his daily happiness. I have found that when a chronically closed chakra opens during a therapy session, it is common that another chakra that is usually open will close briefly in compensation. The personality is not able to tolerate the new open state without some degree of imagined protection in the beginning.
So again, it's a matter of really understanding the process and then figuring out what is working and not working, and then putting strategies in place to get things working in the way that we would like them to be working. I think we can stop here today.